I have known Claire for a couple of years now, and I'm really, really excited to present her to you guys for a very unique, different kind of Jellyvision talk. Claire was actually a co-founder and CMO of Starter League. She was a co-organizer of Ignite Chicago, and she's currently the CEO of Know Your Company, a tool from Basecamp that we use to stay in better touch as we grow and evolve. And she is already, I think, to me at least, a thought leader in organizational health. And today she's going to talk to us about how to give and receive feedback at work, which is particularly important given it's the month of reviews. So Claire Liu, everybody.
Thanks, Amanda. That's really kind of you. I'm like, I hope I can live up to all that. Well, first I have to preface off by saying I'm really sorry for the technical difficulties. And I swear that my original deck is a lot prettier. And not that this doesn't look pretty right now, but I'm like kind of OCD about like typefaces and whatever. It's fine. It's fine. I'll deal. So I'll send you guys the prettier version after. But yeah, like as Amanda was saying, so the thing that I really would love to share with all of you, it's something that I'm really passionate about. I mean, not just even in the workplace, but I think just in life in general. And so really, yeah, looking forward to sharing it all with you. But it's about how to give and get honest feedback, how to have that conversation where you know you need to have it, but you're not exactly sure how or when or what. And so we're going to talk about that. And the first question, though, that I would love to ask or have everyone think about is this. So when do you know that someone is about to quit their job? And if you're a manager, maybe one of your employees, when can you kind of tell when that's about to happen? Or if you're an employee, maybe for yourself, you're like, well, when, or maybe you notice your coworkers, when is it that time? Or when can you tell that someone is about to quit their job? And for me, in my own personal experience, there are two different signs that happen of when I think I know someone's about to quit their job. And one of them is that they'll say something to you. Maybe it will be direct, maybe it'll be a side comment, but they'll say something, I think it's time. And then the other sign is that they don't say anything to you. And they actually just don't say anything. And it's something that I've actually personally been guilty of working in another company. And it's something that I'm sure, maybe you might have observed at some point. So just something to think about, these two different situations between, when someone is about to leave because they're unhappy at work, is it, do you notice it because they say something to you? Or is it something that blindsides you? And I'm going to talk about why that happens, the difference between the two, and then hopefully what all of us can do to avoid that situation, whether you're a manager or an employee. So essentially, though, the reason why this happens, the reason why we feel like, things that, will surprise us, we'll feel like we're the last to know, we feel like, we're not getting honest and truthful feedback, is the fact that ineffective communication, it's really the root problem in any company. And not just in a company, but, honestly, in a lot of things in life in general. It's the things, that go unspoken that really hurt a business the most. It's the things that we, know bother us, but that kind of fester up, and then later down the line, explode, come up in a situation. And so today, specifically, I'm going to talk about, well, in that situation, what are the things that we can do? And I'm going to talk through two specific situations of how you can give and get more honest feedback. So the first is, though, who am I? And Amanda briefly mentioned. But yeah, so my name's Claire. I run a software product that you guys all use. So those random, maybe annoying emails that you get, that's me. Sorry, no. Hopefully you like them, and we can talk after how much you like them or not. But yeah, that's the product that I run and the company that I run. It was originally built, as Amanda mentioned, by 37 Signals, now known as Basecamp. They built it about 2 years ago. It was spun out as its own company a year ago once they realized it was a really hot product. It was really useful, taking off. And their CEO, Jason Fried, asked me to take over and run it. So we're our own 100%, completely independent company. And yeah, it's been exciting. The road, though, to there is a little interesting, though. So prior to that, as Amanda mentioned, I helped co-found the Starter League, which is a beginner-focused software school here in Chicago. One of the first, really amazing experience. But I wasn't sure if that's really what I wanted to do. So after that, I took some time off. I went to go work at another company, another small early stage company. And it was there at that company that I encountered this very problem. So that scenario that I posed to you, when do you know when someone's about to quit their job? I was definitely in camp B. I did not say a single thing to my CEO at the time. And I mean, even to this day, I feel as though, you know what, there's probably a lot more that I could have personally done as an employee to voice my concerns. But I experienced this problem firsthand, this problem of, wow, I see certain things in the organization that I think could be better, that, I have a hunch of, we could, I see this, I notice this, but for some reason, I do not feel comfortable saying anything about it. And I don't know why. And it's weird because, I'm a very upfront person. I have no problem telling anyone what I think most of the time. And so it was a really weird situation to be in. And I was thinking, why is this? I don't want this to be the case, I'm sure, for my CEO as well. It's frustrating. And so, who's doing anything about this problem? And so after that, decided to just quit my job cold turkey and figure out, what exactly is it that could be a solution to this problem. And so, it took some time to do some research, decided to start my own consulting firm and work with CEOs to help them get to know their employees better on a more personal level, in person. And and Basecamp was my first official client, so that's how I got connected to them. And as I told you, they were building Know Your Company, and here I am. So that's the story, but I provide it and share it with you because a lot of what I'm going to share with you, it's based in a lot of research. There's a ton of studies that have been done on this subject, but it's also rooted in a lot of personal experience and feeling, again, this pain of, I've been in the shoot, I know what it feels like to feel like you can't speak up at work and why that is and what I personally wish I would have done when I was an employee at another company. So, like I was saying, this is what I'm hoping to be able to provide some insight on to help all of you avoid in the future. And so, in terms of the cost of what happens when you don't provide honest feedback, that's what I really want to focus on because I think the benefits of feedback, we all kind of know. It's almost a cliche in a lot of ways to be like, yeah, feedback, duh. It's the month of annual reviews, you just do it. Who would dare say that, feedback isn't a good thing, right? So it almost feels pretty intuitive that feedback is supposed to be a good thing, but why is it that we don't do it as often as we'd like, or why is it that it feels really difficult, and what's the real cost of when it doesn't happen? Well, the really interesting thing is that there are some severe, significant costs to not being open, to not regularly having honest feedback within a company. And one of the biggest ways that manifests is disengagement. So, there's a big, very well-known statistic done by Gallup, every year, and I think most recently they said, 72% of employees, are disengaged, in a company. But I think if you dig behind, what is really behind that disengagement, there's a really interesting statistic. So, in a 2009 Gallup study where they did a survey with over 1,000 employees, they found that managers who give little to no feedback to employees result in 4 out of 10 workers being actively disengaged. 40% of employees, all because of little to no feedbacks. The next statistic is particularly interesting. So, employees who receive mainly negative feedback from their manager are over 20 times more likely to be engaged than those receiving little to no feedback. In other words, even if the feedback's bad, they're 20 times still more engaged than if you were to say nothing at all. And whether you're a manager, whether you're an employee, think about it. I want to know the truth. Personally, it's it's a little scary, but at the end of the day, I'm going to feel a lot more invested in what I'm doing if someone is upfront with me. And it's a gut sense that I think a lot of people have, but to see the statistic itself, 20 times more engaged, even if it's negative feedback, I thought that was really powerful. In addition, so what does that disengagement actually cost? In terms of hard numbers, it's anywhere between $3 to $10 grand in salary due to decreased productivity per employee. And that's, not even, including any sort of recruitment cost to, replace the person, any type of training cost. It's just pure productivity. So just, if you're thinking about it from, a number standpoint, it's just, it's a significant cost. The second significant cost of the lack of honest feedback is turnover. So naturally, right? So if someone feels like they can't really speak up at work or they're not getting the feedback they need, they might leave. And in fact, this study, so a 2013 study by the Harris Interactive Institute, said that 74% of people would actually consider today, finding a new job. And this is across, they did an extensive study across multiple industries, 74%. Pretty high. It's something that surprised me for sure. And in another study that, 2011 global workplace study has said that 81% of employees feel that their skills are not being put to full use, 81%. And almost half, so 49% of employees feel that they don't get enough or valuable feedback on their performance. Again, a huge indicator as to why people are leaving the workplace, what's really driving that. And then I found this statistic to be also pretty stunning. So there was a study done in 2010 where they interviewed over 20,000 employees who they considered to be high performing. So these are people who folks have felt like would go kind of above and beyond the call of duty for a company. Ask them, what's the number one thing that's going to keep you at your current job? And they said this. They said the reason why they stay is if they feel connected to the corporate strategy. So again, this sense of connectedness, the sense of feeling as though that they're getting the information that they need, getting the feedback that they need to feel connected to the company. This is what is important to high performers. It's important for keeping anyone in the company that they want to be a part of. So this is not what the original slide looks like. I promise. Do not judge me. I feel bad, but I'm going to deal with it. And in terms of what that results in as far as costs, so up to 150% of an employee's salary, that's how much it costs to actually replace a single person. And yeah, that's again, hard numbers, not even including the amount of time, the effort, the stress. I mean, there's a lot of intangible factors that come with having to replace an employee as well. And so, okay, we get it, it's expensive, it hurts if you don't have honest conversations in a company. Why is it so hard then to do if we know this? Again, what is it about feedback that makes it scary or weird or awkward or uncomfortable? And there's two really significant factors at play. So the first is fear, something that I'm sure you probably already guessed. So in a workplace environment, or really any society, the fact that you have two people and there's some sort of exchange of money means that there's a power dynamic at play. Regardless of whether you choose to acknowledge it, regardless of how great the relationship is, there is a power dynamic at play. And so because of that, there's less of an incentive for someone to want to speak and share the truth, right? It's you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you. So there's this sense of fear that definitely comes with speaking up or feeling like you can give and get feedback. So that's the first factor that keeps someone from giving that feedback. But the second, and this is the more powerful one, is futility. So this sense that, and I described this to you, for me personally, this is something that really struck me, was this sense that regardless of what you say, what you do, what you share about what you think could be better in the company, the sense that despite that, it would all be in vain and that nothing's going to change, that sense of futility, that sense of hopelessness. And that they've found in an HBR study that they did a couple years ago. That's actually 1.8 times more powerful than fear as an obstacle to giving and receiving feedback. So it's not that you're just scared or that employees or the people that you manage are just scared of speaking up. It's that they actually feel like nothing's going to change. That's the real driver behind why feedback feels like such a weird, icky, hard thing to do, that nothing's going to change. And then lastly, kind of surrounding all of this is just the very natural human instinct that we kind of like to avoid things that feel bad or that could be negative. There's been a lot of studies that have shown that the brain actually holds on to negative emotions, negative situations far more than they do powerful ones. If you lose $5, it's going to feel weirder and harder than gaining 10. There's a lot behind the power of negativity and us kind of mentally holding on to that. And so something else to keep in mind. So those are the big factors for why we don't give feedback. So how do you overcome those, right? Given that those are the forces at play, how do you actually give honest feedback and how do you get it from your coworkers, from people you manage, and even from, your bosses here? So The first situation, though, that I'm going to talk about is, that first part. So how do you actually get honest feedback from folks? What does that actually look like? How do you get people to tell you the truth? And this might be, for you as someone working, on a project and wanting to know what, your fellow team members are thinking. This could be from someone you're about to do a one-on-one with, and you want to figure out, how do I actually get them to let us know what we could be doing better to run the department? And so one thing that I'd love for all of you just to take a second to think to yourself is this situation here. So when's the last time that you wanted to really know something about how one of your coworkers was feeling? Maybe something in the last week, 2 weeks. Again, it's annual review month, so kind of perfect. So just think of that situation. And I'll walk you through what's a really helpful framework for me personally. So the first thing when it comes to being able to get honest feedback from someone is this idea of going first. So the power dynamic that I talked about, right? So for you in a position of power, or maybe for really in any situation, but the importance of being vulnerable and going first and saying to someone, hey, not just I would love to get your thoughts on this, but I kind of messed up on this. Like, what do you think could have been better? And framing the conversation in a way where you're taking the first step to show that you're genuine about wanting to get someone's input. So going first. So thinking about what can I say that's going to make me actually vulnerable? What can I say to actually let people know what my true intention is behind asking this question? So for instance, if you're in a one-on-one and you're thinking, how do I get this person to open up to me? You don't just say hey, we're having this meeting just because this is our scheduled one-on-one. It's no, we're having this meeting because I really care actually about your growth as professional, or whatever that true intention is talking about that and saying that and making that really clear. The second thing that is important when it comes to getting feedback, the second thing that you should do is you should ask specific questions, which seems really, really obvious. It's of course you're going to ask questions in order to get feedback. But what I mean is, instead of saying something vague, something general like, how's it going, saying something like, oh, what's one thing in the past 2 weeks that we could have done better? And the reason why this is so important is if you can imagine, when you ask a vague, general question, you're going to get a vague and general response. And so the more specific you can be, the better. So for example, if you were to ask, yeah, how's it going? I will guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, someone will have this response, which is, it's good, fine. How's it going? I'm fine. Things are good, right? But what if you were to ask this? What if you were to go first? What if you were to say, hey, I've been wrestling with some stuff that I'm trying to figure out, I could really use your help on it. And then you ask a specific question. You say, what's one thing in the past week that, we could have done better, right? I could guarantee you also that someone would say something more like this. All of a sudden they're spilling. It's, oh, well, okay, now that they actually admit that, well, here are some things I've noticed. Here are some things I think could be better. So the power of both going first and being able to ask a specific question. So those are the two key things. So for just a minute or two, I want you guys to think back to that first situation that I was asking you to think about. It wasn't just, asking you that out of the blue. But to think about that situation earlier that I was saying of, again, what's something that you really, really want to know about a fellow employee, and what exactly do you think you would want to say? So what's the situation? How would you go first in that situation? And what are the specific questions that you might ask? So maybe for the next minute, if you could turn to the person on your right or left. I would say, unless you're on the edge. And go through these 3 points of, okay, explain the situation where it's something that you really, really want to know from a fellow employee, and talk about how would you go first, what would you say, and then what are the specific questions. And we'll do that for 2 minutes and then come back. Go. Okay. So I know this is going to be a little vulnerable, but does anybody want to share? Yeah, go for it.
So 2 or 3 weeks ago, we rolled out a new intake form for the marketing department to request art assets. And it uses Jira, which is a system that I know the marketing department isn't super familiar with. And since we rolled it out, things haven't gone 100% smooth. There have just been some things that we need to tweak, and I feel that there might be a little friction and just things we can smooth out. So my question could say to Bob, perhaps, or Justin, that I know maybe we should have thought through some of this stuff a little sooner, and it would probably be running smoother. So since we rolled this out in the last 3 weeks, like, what are some specific pain points you guys are feeling?
That's good. Another thing too that might be helpful, something that I do that when I think about questions, because they're sometimes actually like asking a very specific pointed question can be hard to do. One thing I like to do is I like to time box it. So I like to say, what's one, like, I think that's great, specific pain points, but maybe you could even say, like, specific pain points that's happened to you, like, this week. Like, is there anything, like, time box it, like, last month, 3 weeks, yesterday, today? Because I think, people, humans, we gravitate towards specific events. So anytime you can time box it has always been helpful. But, yeah, that's great. And I think the way that, you kind of go first in that, and acknowledge, like, hey, it's something we rolled out 3 weeks ago. Like, they're gonna, like, you need to tell me, what's bad, because it's 3 weeks. Like, it'd be weird if it went all smoothly, right? So I think that's really great. Yeah, absolutely. Honey?
Yeah, I'll share. I had a meeting this morning where I was talking to the IBs about, roles and responsibilities between IBs and customer insights. And what I didn't want to do is have, like, a broadcast that everybody, and then, like, that's it, it's not a dialogue. So I knew that I was standing up, they were sitting down. It was a presentation, not a one-on-one dialogue. And usually you go, does this make sense? And everybody goes, yes. So I said instead, and I pat myself on the back, I said, do you have any advice? And I got 7 or 8 questions and stuff we had not thought through. It was really helpful. And it's like, all right, it's a work in progress. Like, we still have some things to think through, but that was like by saying, all right, you have the power. Like, you tell me what I need to think through. A lot of stuff, just question after question. I'm like, yep, we have work to do. So.
That's amazing. I think framing something as advice is incredibly powerful. Yeah, you get points for that. There was one situation that I'll hear a lot from the founders and the CEOs we'll work with, and they'll say, we'll be working with an employee who's usually a little bit more introverted, and it's hard to get their ideas on something. Like, I want their ideas, but I don't know how to get it out of them. And so one way to do it is to say, hey, I've been struggling with this. What would you suggest? Like, I'm looking for advice. Like, help me out. And that always changes the conversation. So that's awesome. Cool. So then the second situation that I want to talk about, which is now kind of the flip side, is how do you give honest feedback? Oh yeah, I just saw like a grimace or two. I feel you, it's hard. It's really hard, and I do this for a living. It's still really, really hard. So giving honest employee feedback to a coworker, to someone you manage, to your boss, it's really difficult. But there's a framework that I also use for this that I found to be really, really helpful. So again, for this situation, before I share with you, the steps that I like to go through, it's to just think to yourself personally, okay, what's a time where I've wanted to tell a coworker something, my manager something, my boss something, where, might be a little hard to take, but I want to do it without damaging their morale. It's like I want to do it with kindness, and I know that's something that you guys at Jellyvision very much embody and practice, but it's still hard, So just think about that moment, and here are the steps. So here's how you would actually give and break that tough news to someone. It's 3 questions to ask yourself. The first is, what do I want the outcome to be? So for that tough situation, maybe you need to tell someone like, ooh, you're just underperforming, or hey, the way you spoke in that meeting, totally out of line, you cut me off, you cut the client off, whatever. It's like, what do I want the outcome to be? Is it that I want them to know what they did wrong so that they can fix it? Is it that I want them to make an improvement so that our company can be better? Is it that I want them to know just because it hurt my feelings and they need to know that they hurt my feelings? What do you want the actual outcome to be? So that's the first question to ask yourself. The second question is, then how do I want the other person to feel? And I know it's a little touchy-feely, but it's important. It's how do I want them to feel? So that's what I want the outcome to be, but how do I want them to feel about it? Do I want them to feel energized and ready to go and excited to kill it in the next meeting? Do I want them to kind of feel like an asshole, feel sorry? Do I want them to feel really bad about it? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Sometimes. I don't blame you. What do I want them to feel? And a lot of times the answer for me that I realize is I want them to feel like they respect my opinion, but that they want to change, you know? And that's a hard thing to convey to someone, but just reminding myself of that, like while I'm having a conversation of like, how do I actually want them to feel? Okay, well I can't say that because that wouldn't make them feel that great, so okay, gotta say something, right? So how do I want them to feel? And then the last question to ask yourself is, well then what's getting in the way? If this is what I want the outcome to be, if this is how I want them to feel, what's like getting in the way? Is it that they might take it really personally? Is it that we have a huge history and they're gonna think something weird about that? You know, whatever is getting in the way, make sure to talk about that so they know that that's not the actual thing, right? So what's getting in the way? So what's the outcome, or what do I want the outcome to be? How do I want this other person to feel, and what's getting in the way? So how does that look like in practice, right? Because it can feel really abstract. So here's a specific example. So let's say that there's an employee that I'm managing and I want them to give me regular project updates. A surprisingly difficult thing to communicate to someone without like making them feel like, you know, that they're not doing their job, right? I just want them to like loop me in a little bit more. What do I say to them, right? Okay, well, what do I want the outcome to be? Well, I just want more project updates. It's not that simple, right? Just want them to, you know, give me more project updates, cool. So maybe I say something like, and this is a really long text that you don't have to read, but there are some key, you know, ways to communicate. Just be upfront. Say, like, it doesn't feel clear, you know, where the project's at. Like, could you give me more regular updates? Like, you don't need to sugarcoat things. You can just tell people, like, what you need. Like, that's the outcome. Just be clear about it, right? So then the second question you ask is, well, how do I want this person to feel about me, you know, them giving me more project updates? Well, I want them to feel like they, you know, that they want to change. And I want them to feel empowered about it. And I don't want them to take it personally. I don't want them to feel like they're like slacking off or anything. It's not maybe they're just busy. Maybe they just thought that, you know, I didn't need to be clued in. Who knows? But just remembering like, this is how I want them to feel. To not take it personally and to want to change. So how might I say that? You know, what does that look like in terms of words? Well, maybe I'll say things like, from my perspective, right? Take the burden off of I'm not judging you. This is just me saying it's like my own personal thing. Maybe I'm being a weirdo for like wanting it. It's just me, right? From my personal perspective. And then explaining why. Like it's just so that we're headed in the right direction. You know, it's just for the best, you know, best interest of the client. It's just because I want the project to be successful. It's nothing personal. Again, thinking about how do I want this person to feel. And then the last question is, okay, so what's getting in the way? Like, why would this person not want to give me project updates? Well, maybe it's tedious. Yeah, maybe it's like a little annoying. Maybe this person doesn't even see the value, you know? Maybe the place they last worked, they didn't need to do that. Like, what are those things, right? Like thinking about what's getting in the way and then communicating that. So maybe you say something like, you know, it's not that I don't trust you, because I do trust you. Like, this isn't a thing about trust, right? So just talk immediately about, like, what's the thing getting in the way? Or maybe you say something like, yeah, I know it seems time-consuming. I get it. Like, hey, like, I don't want to, like, be reading your project updates either, to be honest. You know, like, I get it, right? But it's, again, explaining, hey, like, the thing that you think it might be, it's not that, right? Just being extra clear about the thing that's getting in the way. So those are the 3 questions to ask: outcome, feeling, what's getting in the way. How about for your guys' situation? So 2 minutes to talk through that situation I talked about. These are the questions that you can ask yourself, but explain the situation, explain to whoever you're talking to what those 3 answers to those questions might be. Go for it. All right. Gonna bring you guys all back in. I feel like this one had more energy to it, like people had more, like, I don't know, I can feel there's maybe some undercurrent of things. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we'll bring it back in. And yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys were talking about. Who wants to share? Yeah, go for it.
So one of the people that I work with takes on a lot of responsibility and a lot of tasks in their job, and I think that they sometimes feel like they're the only person who can do it. Yeah. But we have a huge team that, you know, given the opportunity, can take on some of those roles. And so I think, yeah, the obstacle is then overcoming that fear of kind of letting go of some of those tasks. And I wanted to feel liberated almost, feel, you know, go released from that. And so I don't know, I guess I've tried to explain this before, and so I'm not sure how the best way to approach it in a different way would be.
Yeah. It's hard. The thing that I would almost want to, and ask you, since I don't, since I don't know this person, but why do you think they feel like they have to take everything on? Is it they don't trust people sort of thing? Is it that they think they're better at doing it? Like they think that I'm just gonna do it because I'm the best person. I can do it better, they're just impatient with trying to delegate. Is it an ego thing? I don't know. What do you, not to project and you don't have to answer that right now, but my thing that I would try to dig into, and I actually, to be frank, I will write things, when I have a situation that I need to figure out, I will write down the answers to these questions, word for word, and figure out what I'm gonna say to people word for word. A lot of those conversations, I'm those are things that I've actually written out. That's why I'm putting them as examples, but because it's, I think writing out what's getting in the way of this person, right? Assuming that humans, 99.9% of humans are rational beings, right? And this person, it's it would make sense that they would just not have to bear the burden of everything. Well, what is driving them to think that they need to do that? Giving them complete benefit of the doubt. What would make sense in their mind? And just kind of listing out all those scenarios, and then maybe the next time you sit down with them, or it's hard, it's a very difficult thing to do, but mentioning those things, hey, is it because of this, or hey, you can trust people, or hey, just expect that when you do this, someone's gonna mess up. It's okay, you just expect, whatever, an address, what are those things getting in the way? I find, that third question to be particularly powerful, because that can usually unlock, why is someone not doing and acting in a way that you would expect? So, cool, thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Would you advise in that specific case to the question that you asked,
Yeah.
why is that person feel that way?
Yeah.
To just ask
Yes.
that person that?
Yes, I think so too. And you have to do it though probably in a way where they're not gonna feel defensive. That's the tough thing, is sometimes, and humans were so weird, because I think even in that situation, if you were to even, to ask it on the wrong day or in the wrong tone, someone might be they might not even say the actual truth. So the way that I would do it is I would suggest, say, is it this? Oh, that's just I don't know, suggest to them, hey, is it because you feel you can't trust people? Because, oh, it's not? Okay, cool. There was just a thing. Well, what do you think? Is it this? And give a couple options, so then they can be well, no, it's not because it's this. So instead of leaving it open-ended, if that makes sense, is saying well, it might be, is it this? And oh, that's just, I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying, is it, is it this? If not, what do you think it might be? And that helps to, because you're right, just asking them straight up, that would be in an ideal, world, the way to go.
So
Yeah.
rather than leaving it open-ended so they can get away with an answer,
Right.
they either affirm
or exactly deny and be no, that's not. And sometimes you could even say something a little, not ridiculous, but something that is not true, because then because then people will be no, it's not because of that. It's oh, do you think it's because I can't actually do the work that you're telling me? No, it's not that. So that's helpful.
How do you start a conversation? How do you lay the framework? What are the words you use to lay the framework for a conversation where you're going to give somebody difficult feedback? What do you do?
I talk about me. No, and that sounds weird, but I think the worst thing that can happen in a difficult conversation is that the other person becomes defensive, right? Because then they close up, then you don't actually get to the truth of what's in, and they're going to hear it through this filter of oh, they're attacking me, oh God, they think I'm a horrible person, right? So the whole goal is how do you just put this person at ease, not make them defensive, and I found the best way to do that is to talk about myself in the way of saying, hey, so this is so I've been doing a lot of thinking. I've been trying to really think about how I can improve as a leader. I've realized that we should probably talk more openly and honestly about how things should be going. Here are my thoughts from my perspective. What do you think? It's about me. What do you think about that? This is just me. This is just one person on this planet. You don't have to listen to me if you don't want to. This is just my opinion. It's all, this is don't, it's not a thing that I'm attacking you with.
So is it
yeah.
So the whole kind of thing is it's a IMHO, and that's it. That's how you kind of frame it up. It's just one thought.
Yes.
And does that and do you feel that works for everybody?
No.
What are there other avenues? Because
Yeah.
it sounds it's sort of the way you're talking. It seems very kind of you
you've got a particular personality,
Yeah.
and a way of vibing about
Totally.
it, and you can kind of pull that off.
Totally. Yeah.
Whereas like Amanda could not.
Getting real.
Amanda could be like, look, it's just my right, guys? She's very, very good at that. She's very, very good at it.
No, you're right, though.
But it's like,
Style.
It's not that way. So what are I'm also joking, but
Yeah.
what are the other like kind of techniques that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Harry. To be honest, like I don't know because I think it's like really deeply personal. Like I think the things that work best for like for almost all variety of people is asking yourself questions to figure out in the best way, like from your style, from like your vantage point, like how you can answer them in a way. I don't know. I think it like, and then that's probably a horrible answer, but I feel like it's the truth. Like I'm not.
Ask these guys. See what.
Yeah, like what do you? Yeah. I'm open to hearing too.
I think there's a very interesting thing that popped up in both of the
Yes.
examples that you gave, where there's a permission piece. There's
Yes.
a part at the end of both of those that literally said, "Do you mind if I give you some feedback?"
Yes.
I think that what this is doing right now is basically cultivating a culture that accepts feedback.
Right.
Everyone in this room is going to get feedback eventually. So that permission piece is kind of setting up, hey, are you ready for this?
Right, and that's another great point. And yeah, I mean another like small, very tactical piece that works a lot of times is saying, hey, do you mind? Like you said, can I, do you mind if I provide this feedback? Like, would you be open to hearing some thoughts about how the meeting went last week? Let's set up a time, talk about that. That's always a good way to ease into the conversation.
I think anytime you're trying to like elicit change from someone, it's important to kind of focus on like a mutual goal. So whatever it is that you're both coming together to try to achieve, like if you can address that up front, to kind of say, hey, listen, I'm about to give you some feedback that's not going to feel good, but it's for the purpose that we share this mutual goal of getting to this place eventually. So that's why we're doing it, and then you kind of go into these are my thoughts. I feel like that's another tactic. It kind of sounds like your tactic is a little bit like self-appreciating, like, hey, I'm screwing things up a little bit too, like I'm thinking about stuff, we're all in this position. That's one tactic. I think a separate tactic is like, hey, we're in it for the same reason. We both memorize in the same prize. And in order to get there, we gotta do something.
That's amazing. So I don't know if any of you have read Crucial Conversations by any chance. So they talk about that and the whole idea of a shared pool of meaning. So feeling, and especially in a company setting, right, where you realize like your employee, and it's sometimes, it's hard to remember. It's like you're all part of the same team, actually. Like you all actually want the same things. You want the company to be successful. You want everyone to be happy, right? So yeah, talking about what that shared goal is huge. That's great. Yeah.
It's hard, like, your question about like different personalities and like that, but I feel like in the context of an organization, I feel like this whole thing is a muscle that you're exercising.
Yes.
The more you do it in small ways,
Yes.
more frequently, I feel like people are more apt to develop that skill, that thicker skin, and the ability to get through that.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's very well put.
And
It's a
then no
muscle.
surprises. No surprises.
Yeah, well, you're still going to be surprised, but I feel like you're exercising that muscle of giving and receiving feedback. So if there's something that's a little bit beyond what you're expecting, like, okay, I'm a little more in shape to deal with this emotionally.
Right. I completely agree. Because you need to feel comfortable about it, right? So, once you have permission, once you understand, what the shared goal is, it's like, no, now we, it feels okay. It's not like, I'm going to go run a marathon cold. It's like we've been doing some workouts. So it feels okay. Yeah.
I wonder if maybe part of the pattern we're talking about of styles of giving feedback or asking for it evolves around having shared empathy that you've communicated to that person. So I feel like one style of communicating that empathy is to say, I would be the same or similar to you, where it would be self-deprecating, like, I'm making mistakes all the time, here's a bunch of them. And then be like, do you have any to share? I think too, like saying that we have a shared ambition rather than shared flaws is probably also a similar idea. Like trying to be like, we are here, we are both this.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah.
No. That's really insightful. Cool. Yeah, no, good stuff, guys. Yeah, I mean, that's the framework that I wanted to share. I mean, to Harry's point, it's like, this is more art than it is science, let's be real. Like, human beings, like, we don't really make sense a lot of times. The reason why, the questions that I pose around, like, oh, how does this person feel? Or, going first so that the person feels more comfortable. Like, it's all centered really around emotions, and that's just because that's what humans react to more than logic is, emotions. And so there's no, one size fits all by any means. And I think, it's something that I think no one has the complete answer to, but, like you mentioned, the more that you practice it, the more it does become and feel more comfortable, feel more regular. And I would say the most important, the most important things to remember are, I mean, in addition to going first, asking specific questions, and in addition to, the 3 questions that I posed, is this, which is the fact that it's a lot of talk, and at the end of the day, the most important thing is, what you do with that feedback, right? So if you are on the receiving end and you hear someone, be open, tell you what they're thinking, what do you end up doing with that? And then also, if you're the person asking the questions, are you ready to hear what you're gonna, hear in response, good, bad, icky, whatever, and do something with it too? Action is the most important piece, and talk. It doesn't matter much unless you're able to do something about it, and that's the real heart of it, the real core of it. And then of course, in the spirit of feedback, I want to make this talk better. I want to know what you guys think. That's my email address. It's kind of hidden because, again, the presentation. So it's just Claire@knowyourcompany.com. Open to any thoughts. I want to figure out, how I can be more helpful, how I can help you guys individually, like outside of Know Your Company and the software, but even individually, have more open, honest conversations. Like, this is very much like my life's work. It's what I'm really passionate about. So feel free to reach out. And yeah, thank you.